Apple Knocker Radio.
Many people have a hard time understanding how someone can be open to different ideas from multiple religious and spiritual perspectives. Isn't that a contradiction, they ask? The answer is yes, sometimes, but not usually. Please allow me to explain. I understand perfectly well how the spiritual ragpicker perspective seems paradoxical to many people. It seemed that way to me once. I remember reading that Gandhi studied Christian, Islamic, and Hindu texts and believed that all pointed equally to God. I remember sitting for a long time as a young man and contemplating that idea and coming out confused. It sounded great in theory, but it just made no sense. The perspective is actually not that complicated, though, when you occupy that headspace. See, I say the Jesus prayer and I recite Psalm 23 every single day. But I also do the Ganesh mantra regularly, and I do a yogic meditation. When I'm feeling lost, I use a shamanic practice to commune with nature and give myself some inner peace. I understand how that makes no sense to a lot of people. I really do. It makes perfect sense to me, though. But when I try to explain it in general terms, it gets too ambiguous and flaky and ends up sounding irrational. So, when I recently had a spiritual synchronicity that illustrated this overlap, I figured I'd talk about it. It went down like this. A couple of weeks ago, I talked to Shaman John Rasmussen. I interviewed John months ago, and we've had some correspondence ever since. During my talk with John, he told me something that I didn't want to hear. John told me that malignant spiritual entities, what most of us in the West think of as demons, get their hooks in us when we beat ourselves up over mistakes that we've made. See, it's not the mistake that invites the baddies in, he explained. It's us beating ourselves up over our mistakes that does that. I didn't like his perspective. In fact, I instantly felt an emotional resistance rise up in me. And that might seem strange. Why would I not want to be cut loose from the chains of guilt over things long since past? I can't really say why that is, other than that I feel very strongly that there is a right and a wrong in this world. It's wrong to mistreat people. It's wrong to hurt people. It's wrong to be lazy and selfish. People have asked me why I have such a problem with moral relativism, and my answer is simply this. If you can hear about an innocent child being murdered and think, well, it's ultimately no morally different than tying shoelaces, then I personally think you've gone astray. Most importantly, and let me say, your life is your life, my friend. I'm not trying to tell anybody else what to think. But for me, personally, I have no desire to think or to live that way. Helping children is right. Hurting children is wrong. Adopting a morally relativistic perspective that confuses that simple truth seems powerfully wrong-headed to me. But what I came to realize was that I was twisting what John had actually said. He never said it was okay to hurt people. He simply said that beating oneself up over it opened them to malicious spiritual influences. And besides, does it really help if I still beat myself up relentlessly for often little things that I did years and years ago, or even yesterday? Have I not learned the lessons I needed to learn already? What then is the purpose of continually flogging myself? I came to see that I was being irrational, yet something in me just couldn't accept it. Then I heard Father Mark Goring and all of his Satan talk. See, I subscribe to people of just about every philosophical, spiritual, scientific, and religious stripe. I'm driven by an endless and frankly often annoying hunger to understand what this reality is and how I'm supposed to be conducting my life. One of my favorite subscriptions is to Canadian Catholic Father Mark Goring. Goring is ever humble and funny, with a kind of blue-collar everyman disposition, yet he's consistently insightful and always interesting to listen to. The very morning after talking to Shaman John, an older Goring video popped up in my feed. In it, Goring discussed Satan and sin. He said that Satan manipulates us by telling us that our sins are unforgivable and that our sins exclude us from God's love. This manipulation is very powerful because it preys upon our best instincts to correct our immoral actions. The reason it's deception, Goring says, is that God's forgiveness knows no bounds. We are never outside of its reach. It's not God that wants to endlessly berate us for our mistakes. God is always ready to forgive, according to Goring anyway. Satan digs his hooks in us when we believe that we are fallen beyond redemption and that we have become too ugly for God's forgiveness. What fascinated me about the sequence of events is that both men were pointing to essentially the same thing. Beating ourselves up over our mistakes opens us up to dark spiritual influences. This is exactly what the two men were saying. They just said it in different ways. One man simply framed it as those nameless dark entities, while the other called it Satan. Essentially, though, they were saying the exact same thing. So, when I say that I am more interested in the underlying phenomenon than I am with any particular interpretations of the phenomenon, this is what I mean. The commonality in what each man said is what's most important to me. There are dark consciousnesses out there that prey upon us when we beat ourselves up over our mistakes. Shaman John agrees, he just gives the baddies a different name. Father Mark Goring agrees, he just gives the baddies a different name. The commonality in the underlying phenomenon and the underlying phenomenon itself is what matters to me. And that's it, really. That's how I can mine from different spiritual traditions without feeling like I'm contradicting anything. The idea is actually pretty simple, I think. We just need to see it illustrated with a concrete example. Or maybe not. Let me know if that's the case. I'm always open for discussion and happy to learn. I'm just a pilgrim, friends. I'm certainly not a guru. So let me know what you think, and maybe we'll have a chat. All right, peace out.